We begin the Gemara today in Daf Ches Amud Aleph, towards the top of the Yamud by the two dots. Goes back to the Mishnah. It said in the Mishnah, Rabbi Laza v'Rab Shimon Oimrim be'echad b'Tishrei. When it comes to Maaseh Behemah, the Rosh Hashanah is echad b'Tishrei. As Rashi brought in the Mishnah, the halacha by Maaseh Behemah is you can't combine for the behemoths from one year to another year to give Maaseh Behemah. So when's the cutoff date for Maaseh Behemah? So the Tana Kama said it's echad be'elul. Rabbi Laza and Rabbi Shimon say it's be'echad b'Tishrei. So the Gemara is going to explain the machlokes now. Amar Rabbi Yechanan u'shneim mikra echad darshu. The source of both opinions come from the same pasuk. Shenema, there's a pasuk that says, Tilim, lavshu karem matzayin. The tzayin, the sheep, they get filled up with karem. It's an expression for pregnancy. When they get filled up and fatter, so that's the taich of this beginning of the pasuk. Then it says, va'amokim yatfu bar. The valleys get filled up with the grain. The grain starts growing. Yisroyau af yashiru. And the grain, when it grows tall, so then it makes this sound that's like music. Rashi says when you have the standing tvua and it has the kernels at the top and they blow in the wind and they bang into each other, it makes this sound like a song. That's the pasuk. So now how do you dash in this pasuk? Rab Meir says, Eimesai lov shekara matzayin. When do the sheep get pregnant? Bizman sha'amokim yatvu bar. At the same time when the valleys fill with the grain. When do the valleys get full with grain? Ba'adar. That happens in Adar time. Adar time is when it starts, you plant it in the beginning of the winter. And then Adar time is when it's filled with grain. And that's the time when the nature is that the sheep become pregnant. So Mis'abre is Ba'adar. If they become pregnant in Adar, V'yeld is Ba'av. They give birth. The nature of the small animals is that the pregnancy is 5 months. So they give birth 5 months later in the end of Av. So therefore, Rosh Hashanah Shalahan Elul. So the Rosh Hashanah, the cutoff date for the behemoths of the previous year, and then the new year is at Elul time. Just like when it comes to the grain, so when's the cutoff for the grain? Tishrei. Why Tishrei? Because at the end of this summer is when all the grain is gathered, and that's the end of that season, when it's done. And then you start Tishrei, the new year, and you're planting the new crop for the next year. It's the same thing with the behemoths. They get pregnant in Adar time, they're born in Av time, so that's sort of when the behemoths are done, when they're born. And then that's the Rosh Hashanah, Rosh Chodesh Elul. That's Rabbi Meir's opinion. Rabbi Laza and Rabbi Shimon Oimrim, Rabbi Laza and Rabbi Shimon say, Eimesai lavshu karem matzayin. When do the sheep become pregnant? Not in the time when the fields fill with the grain. Bizman sheyisroyau af yashiru. It's at the time when it's already getting much riper, it's getting ready to be cut already. When you have the full, when they're already standing tall and they start making the sound when they blow in the wind. Eimesai shabalim oimre shira. When do the stalks that have these shabalim, when they have the kernels in it, and they blow in the wind and they make this sound like they're saying, singing shira today, Bishter? Benissen. That's in the month of Nissen. So therefore, from here we understand, Mis'abra is Benissen. The animals, they become pregnant in Nissen time, V'yeld is Elul, and they give birth in Elul time. So the end of 5 months later is actually in the end of Elul. If therefore, Rosh Hashanah Shalem Tishrei. So the cutoff, the end of when they're ready, they're born is Elul time, so the Rosh Hashanah is Tishrei. So basically, the time of Kotzir.
Kotzir is not Pesach.
Chag HaKotzir is Shavuos, right? Okay, so but the Kotzir for the Tvua, for the Chitim is in Pesach time. That's why you bring the Chodosh for the new Omer. I don't know. Okay, so that's the way the Gemara explains the machlokes. Basically, if you understand what's saying here, in the pasuk when it says Lavshu HaKarem Matzayin, do you connect the beginning of the pasuk to what it says V'amokim yatvu bar, when the fields start filling with grain, or do you connect Lavshu Karem Matzayin to what it says afterwards? Yisrayu af yashiru. That's the machlokes here. So now the Gemara explains how each one interprets the pasuk. Now the other opinion that says that we connect the two parts of the pasuk, Lavshu Karem Matzayin V'amokim yatvu bar, so Haksiv Yisrayu af yashiru. It also continues in the pasuk and it says that this is the time when the Tvua sings. But it's not the time when the Tvua sings. In Chodesh Adar, it's not yet whole Tvua. So the Gemara answers, Hu ba'aflasa da havyam benissen. The pasuk is continuing and saying that there's the tfuah that grows later on, so later on in the season. So no, again, huba flossa refers to those animals that become pregnant later on. Most animals become pregnant earlier on, when the tfuah in the time of Chodesh Adar, when the tfuah is growing in the field. But then there's animals that become pregnant later in the season, which is the Havim ben Nisan. That's the Chodesh Nisan. So the pasuk is saying both. The pasuk is saying most of them become pregnant when Vamokim Yatvu Bar, which is in Chodesh Adar. But there are some that become pregnant later on. Now the Gemara says, V'idach nami, the other opinion, Hoksiv Vamokim Yatvu Bar. It says that it becomes pregnant at the time when the field fills with the grain, which is in Adar time. Hahu b'charfa yaisa. So he says, no, it's the other way around. Most animals become pregnant later on, in Chodesh Nisan. There are some that are quicker. Charfa yaisa literally means sharp. They're quicker, and they become pregnant earlier on. The Asya Ma'adar, they already become pregnant from Adar time. Now the Gemara asks, but the way you read the pasuk only makes sense according to Rabbi Meir. Bishleim la Rabbi Meir kidichsiv. The pasuk as you read it makes sense. Lav shukar matzayim. The sheep become pregnant when bisman shamokim yatvu bar. So the pasuk first says that most of the sheep become pregnant in the time when the field fills with the grain, which is Adar time. And then it continues. The pasuk says a minority v'ikanami yisrael yaf yishiru. There are those, the minority of the sheep that become pregnant later on when the tfu is standing tall already and it sings. So the pasuk makes sense. But according to Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon, the order in the pasuk should be the opposite of the way it says. The pasuk should first be talking about the majority of the sheep and then about the minority. So it should say as follows: when do the sheep become pregnant? Most of the sheep become pregnant later on in Nisan time when the tfuah is already standing tall. And then the pasuk should add that there's a minority. There are those that also become pregnant even earlier on when it's Adar time, when the grains, the field gets full of grain. So why is the pasuk saying the minority first and then the majority? So therefore the Gemara changes the pshat. So therefore Rava says the kula alma. The truth is, everybody agrees. The time when the sheep become pregnant is when the field fills with grain in Adar time, which means that everybody agrees that they give birth in Chodesh Av time. So then what's the argument about? Ba'adar, so that's an Adar time. But the basis of their argument is the following pasuk. It says aser to aser. And that pasuk aser to aser, it says kol tfuah zarecha. So it's speaking about the tfuah, the ma'aser be'emah, but ma'aser of tfuah. But because it says a double lashon, we learn out b'shnei ma'aseres hakosav medaber. The Torah is speaking about two ma'aseres, echad ma'aser be'emah, ve'echad ma'aser dagan. It's speaking about ma'aser be'emah and the ma'aser of the grain. So we compare the two. Now, how we compare them? Here's the machlokes. Rabbi Meir savar makish ma'aser behema ma'aser dagan. I compare ma'aser behema to the ma'aser of the grain. Ma'aser dagan, just like when it comes to grain. Samuch legamrei isurei. When is the cutoff date for the grain? Rosh Hashanah, Tishrei. Why? Because at the end of the summer is when it's all gathered in the field and you have the pile. That's when it's done and it's ready to take in to be eaten. So that's the time when it's the cutoff date, and that's the time when it's chayiv and ma'aser, and then begins a new year, Rosh Hashanah. So just like it's when the gemar, when it's all ready and done, that's the time for the ma'aser of the grain, af ma'aser behema. The same is also, we compare ma'aser behema, samach legamra yisurei. When it's done, in other words, after the pregnancy and the behema is born in off time, so after then is the Rosh Hashanah, which is going to be Rosh Chodesh Elul. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon Sabri, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon say we compare it to ma'aser dagan, but in a different way. Makish ma'aser behema la ma'aser dagan. We compare ma'aser behema to the ma'aser of the grain. Ma'aser dagan, just like by the ma'aser of the grain, the date of the Rosh Hashanah Shaloi Tishrei. The Rosh Hashanah, the new year starts Tishrei. Af ma'aser behema Rosh Hashanah Shaloi Tishrei. Also, too, by the ma'aser behema it starts Tishrei, even though they actually become ready. This is born of time and this becomes ready later, a month later, it doesn't matter. According to them, the comparison is on the actual time, which is Rosh Hashanah, Tishrei time. There is a question that Rishonim ask on this whole sugi here, beneged to the pregnancy of the animals. The Gemara is discussing the pregnancy of the small animals, which their pregnancy is 5 months. But the big animals, their pregnancy is 8 or maybe even 9 months. So why is the Gemara ignoring that? So the answer that the Rishonim, one of the answers the Rishonim say is that most animals are small animals, and therefore we're following the pregnancy of the small animals. We're not following the big animals. The Taisus Yantiv says that the nature of the animals that have a longer pregnancies, they get pregnancy earlier on in the winter. So the Gemara is discussing these animals that get pregnant by Adar time or maybe Nisan time, but the bigger animals, they can become pregnant earlier. Sagt the Gemara weiter, it said in the Mishnah, Be'echad be'tishrei, Rosh Hashanah l'shanim. The first day of Tishrei is the Rosh Hashanah for the years. What does this mean? Lamai ilchase, regarding what does this mean, Rosh Hashanah for the year? Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa says, l'shtaris. What this means is, when it comes to writing the shtar, so the shtar was always written with the date of the king. That's the king at that time. So when's the Rosh Hashanah for the king? The Rosh Hashanah for the king, that you write his year into the shtar, starts Rosh Hashanah time, and Tishrei time, that is.
And when's the year of the king?
What do you mean, when's the year of the king?
Oh,
the Gemara is going to say, wait, it's all coming. It's all coming, okay. So right now the Gemara is saying that the Rosh Hashanah for the king is Tishrei time. And this is in the shtar, when you write in the date in the shtar. And what's the nafkamina here? The Tanan, so we learned in the Mishnah, the Gemara brought this already on Daf Beis Amar Aleph. Shtari chayva mugdamin psulin. When you have a shtar that's predated, it was written before the loan took place, that's a shtar that's puzzle. Because you could end up taking away from someone not rightfully. Because the shibud then starts earlier, and if someone bought the field, you're going to come and say, hey, it belongs to me, but really the date is wrong, it's predated, it does not belong to you. But a post-dated shtar ksherin, that's kosher. You're not taking it doesn't cause you to come and take away anything from anyone. So, okay, Rashi already explained this before, I explained it then. Kitzur, the point is, if you had a shtar that the date was Tammuz, and the actual loan took place in Kislev time, so you have to figure out whether the Tammuz is the Tammuz before Kislev, or the Tammuz is the Tammuz after Kislev, so you have to know exactly when the king became a king. So the change of the year of the king, they set it at Tishrei, so it should be clear, it shouldn't be any confusions about this. So we know exactly if the shtar is predated or post-dated. So the Gemara asks the question, but Vatnan, the first thing in our Mishnah before was Be'echad b'Nisan Rosh Hashanah l'malachim. And at the first day of Nisan is the Rosh Hashanah for the kings. How are we saying now that over here it's Tishrei? And over there we already said Lamai Hilchaseh, that what did it mean when the Mishnah said that it's Rosh Hashanah l'malachim, V'amar Rav Chisda l'shtaris. And Rav Chisda said also the same thing, that over there it's for the shtar, to know the date in the shtar when you write the year of the king. And for the Gemara, like Kashya, this is not a question, it's already explained before in the Gemara. Kala Malchi Yisrael. In the Mishnah, when it said Nisan, it's speaking about the Yiddish kings. And Kala Malchi Yom Yisraelim. Here, when we're saying that we count from Tishrei, the new year for the king, that's for a Goyish king. So the Gemara, now Ela Hodam Rav Chisda. So this is what Rav Chisda said. Lo Yishanu Ela Lamalchi Yisrael. Rav Chisda, he said on the Mishnah that when the Mishnah says that the Rosh Hashanah l'malachim is Nisan time, so Rav Chisda came and said that was only for the Yiddish kings. But when it comes to the Goyish kings, you count from Tishrei. That's what Rav Chisda said on the first Mishnah. Fragt the Gemara, according to your pshat now, Rav Chisda mas Nisan asal hashminan? Why is Rav Chisda making it as if it's his own chiddush? He's telling you what it says in the Mishnah. When the Mishnah later says Be'echad b'Tishrei Rosh Hashanah l'shanim, that's what it's saying, that for the Goyish kings you count from Tishrei. So why is Rav Chisda saying it as his own chiddush? He's telling you what it says in the Mishnah according to your pshat. Says the Gemara, a few answers. Either it's the Gemara answers Rav Chisda kroy asel hashminan. Rav Chisda, his main chiddush was the continuation that he explained. We had it before in the Gemara. He explains the psukim that have some psukim.
I think you skipped the line.
Skip the line. That's the question. I just read it.
That's the question?
Yeah, that's part of the question. Is what Rav Chisda is saying? He's saying what it says in the Mishnah clearly. So the Gemara answers, no, Rav Chisda kroy asel hashminan. Rav Chisda is telling you the psukim, because we had before, some psukim it says that the Rosh Hashanah for the king is from Nisan, from Shlomo Melech, and then there's other psukim over there by, what was his name? Achashtasta, or Daryavish, Kairish. So he's from Tishrei time. So Rav Chisda, his main focus was to explain the psukim, how that the Goyish king is from Tishrei time. Or you can say there's actually another pshat in the Mishnah. Rav Chisda Rav Zera Masnila. Rav Chisda, he understood our Mishnah when it said that Tishrei is Rosh Hashanah l'shanim. He teaches it like Rav Zera, not like the pshat we brought before, but like Rav Zera. The Rav Zera said, L'tkufa. When we say that Rosh Hashanah, Tishrei, is Rosh Hashanah for the year, it means for the tkufa. What does for the tkufa mean? the sun and the moon, the cycle of the sun and the moon, which are the source of the different seasons of the year, when did it start? Did it start Tishrei time? The tkufa that we go now with the cycles of the moon and the sun and the moon, that is, it all starts from Sheshes Shmei Bereshis. But the question is, when did Sheshes Shmei Bereshis start? Did it start Tishrei time or did it start Nisan time? So what the Mishnah is saying is the tkufa, the cycle of the sun and the moon, starts Tishrei time. Rabbi Lazahi, and this follows Rabbi Lazar. The Amma beTishrei Nivra Ilam, that the world was created in Tishrei. That's what the Mishnah meant when it said L'shanim. It's the beginning of the year from the sun and the moon, the cycle of the sun and the moon. And there's a long Taisvis here which goes through the details. It's not possible to share this now, but Taisvis goes through a bunch of cheshbainis here. How there's a nafgemina b'poil to know exactly the tkufa of when to be mekadesh the chaydish and the new year. All the cheshbainis, the cheshbon starts from Tishrei time and not from Nisan time.
You have the Gemara's question, the Shtaris, and the Mainaf Gemara, and it says over there we have Nisan.
Right.
So what's he saying now?
So now what the Gemara is answering is that Rav Chisda understood when the Mishnah said Rosh Hashanah L'shanim, it's not going on Shtaris. Rosh Hashanah L'shanim is going on Tkufa. No, exactly. So therefore when Rav Chisda before said Lo Yishanu Ela L'malchi Yisrael, he wasn't telling you what it says in the Mishnah later, because the Mishnah is not going on that. The Mishnah is going on Rosh Hashanah L'shanim. It's a whole different thing. That's why he was saying it as his own chiddush. So the Gemara, we by saying my third answer. Where am I? No. 1 second, I went up. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Amar. That's where it is. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Amar Lidin. And the third pshat in the Mishnah is when it says that it's Rosh Hashanah for the years, it means judgment. The judgment of the entire years is at Rosh Hashanah time. Chsiv Mereishus Hashanah Bad Achris Shana Mereishus Hashanah Nidin Ma Yehei B'Seifa. That from the beginning of the year, the Eibusha judges everybody what's going to happen until the end of the year. That's the pasuk. So the Gemara says, what's what?
When's Rosh Hashanah?
So Meimai the Tishrei. How do we know that Rosh Hashanah refers to Tishrei? Maybe it refers to some other Rishis. And for the Gemara, the Chsiv Tikka b'Chay the Shofar b'Kesel Yom Chageinu. You blow the shofar in the time of Yom Chageinu, and it says B'Kesa. What does B'Kesa mean? Ezeu Chag Shachaydish Miskasa Bay. Which is the Yom Tiv that the Chaydesh, the new moon, is covered in it. And as Rashi says, because it's the first day of the month and it's very hard to see the Levana. Rashi brings this, we'll have it later in the Gemara, that from the west and in the east, you could only see it in a certain angle in certain parts of the day. So when is that? Havayim is Rosh Hashanah. That's Rosh Hashanah. So the pasuk Tikka b'Chay Shofar goes on Rosh Hashanah. Now how do we know that that's the time of judgment? Because the pasuk there continues and says, Ki chayk li Yisraelu mishpat l'kei Yaakov. That's the time of judgment. There is another pshat in Ezel Chag Shachedesh Miskasa. There's many pshatim in the Rishonim. One of the other pshatim is in the Nusach of davening. That in Rosh Hashanah, it's the only Rosh Chodesh that you don't mention Rosh Chodesh in the davening. You only mention Rosh Hashanah because we don't want the Satan to know that it's Rosh Chodesh. So that's what Miskasa means in the Nusach HaTfilah, that we don't mention Rosh Chodesh. Now the Gemara is going to bring another few pshatim in this pasuk here. Tanda Rabbanan and Abrayso we learned. What this teaches me is she'ein bezin shel maila nechnasen ledin. The bezin shel maila does not enter into judgment. Elam kein kitchu bezin shel mata sachaydish. Only when the bezin shel mata was mekadesh the chaydish, then the bezin shel maila starts the judgment for the new year. Tanya, another brayso we learned ki chayk li Yisrael, who in the beginning of the pasuk it says chayk li Yisrael, so it's for Yidden. Ein li yala li Yisrael. So this means that this is a time of judgment for Yidden. Luma sa'ila minayin. How do we know that it's a time for judgment for Goyim as well? Tamad loima mishpat l'lekei Yaakov. It says there's a mishpat for the Eibishter. The Eibishter, which is a lekei Yaakov, judges. It doesn't say who he judges. So over here, it's not going only on Yidden. Here, the Eibishter judges the entire world. So why does it say first Chayk li Yisrael? If anyways, the Eibush is judging everybody. So that would include Yidden as well. So why does it say first Chayk li Yisrael? When it comes to the judgment of Rosh Hashanah, the Yidden enter first, and then the Goyim. And this is similar to something that Rav Chisda said. The Amar Rav Chisda says, Melech v'tzibur, if you have a king, and then all of the people that are going in for a judgment. Melech nichnas tchila. The king goes in first, lidin, to be judged, and then everyone else. Shanema, the pasuk says, this is by Shlomo Melech, mishpat avdai. First, the Eibush judges his servant, which is referring to Shlomo Melech, and then a mishpat amai, and then he judges the rest of the nation. My timer, what's the reason why the king comes first? Because it's not Eirachara, that is. It's not honorable, it's not the customary for the king to wait, to stand outside and wait. Yibai Seima, another reason, Mekamed the Leifish Charein. The king is going to be judged before the Eibishter judges everyone else, and then you see everything that happens by everyone else, and it brings up anger by the Eibishter because of everything that goes on amongst the people. So therefore the king is judged first, so that anger should not go on the king. So just like Rav Chisda said this regarding the king and all other people, it's the same thing also with the Yidden and Lahavdil the Goyim, that the Yidden are judged first. There's a famous Ran over here in the Gemara before, and this is also quoted in Chassidus. It says here in the Gemara before, Meresh Hashanah, that this refers to Rosh Hashanah, because this is the beginning of the year, the beginning of creation. Right? And that's why the Yidden are judged then. And the Gemara said the Tkufa starts from Rosh Hashanah. So the question is, but there's the famous Medrash that says that Rosh Hashanah was Nivra b'Chofei. The world, that is, the creation is Chofei Elul, not Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the day that Adam Rishon was created. And the Ran says, so the Gemara of here means that this is the Gemara of Sheshis Yimei Bereishis. Conclusion. This is discussed in all the Memorim of Chassidus, B'negei to Rosh Hashanah. Why is Rosh Hashanah not on Chofei Elul, and it's dafka on the day of creation of Adam Rishon, because that's the purpose of creation. So yeah, the source of this Ran is quoted in all the Memorim of Chassidus. Okay. Yeah.
But Tishrei we don't.
We're not Mekadesh to Chaydish, but then in the times of Zman Shabbos Hamikdash Kayom, the best not to be Mekadesh to Chaydish. Today our minig is that we're not Mavarach to Chaydish. Correct.
So there's
not today, but in the time of Beis Hamikdash.
No
okay, and the Satan gets confused. Uleshmitten. The next thing it said in the Mishnah that Rosh Hashanah is the Rosh Hashanah for Shmita. Minala, from where we know that Shmita begins Rosh Hashanah. The Chsivu Bashana Shvius, the 7th year, Shabbos and Yil Haaretz, and the land should rest. And V'gomar Shana mitishrei. It says here Uba Shana, and we learn that from the other pasuk where it says Shana mitishrei. The Chsiv Mereishis Hashana. It says Mereishis Hashana, and we just learned that was Tishrei. Frag the Gemara v'ligmer Shana mi Nissen. Maybe compare the word Shana that it says here to the word Shana that it says by Nissen. The Chsiv Rishnu Lachem Lachatshei Hashana, and maybe Shemitah should start from Nissen to Nissen. Answers the Gemara, Donin Shana she'eni mechadashim, Meshana she'eni mechadashim. We're learning out the Gzeir Shaveh with the word Shana from another word Shana, where in both of them it does not say the Chadashim and anything about a Chaydish. Ve'ein Donim Shana she'eni mechadashim, and we're not going to learn out from Bashana Shvius, where it does not mention a Chaydish, Mishana she'eshim mechadashim, from the word Shana that it says by Nissen, where it says Chatshei Hashana. So therefore the Gzeir Shaveh is to Tishrei. Yeah, same thing. Now it says in the Mishnah that Yovel starts also Rosh Hashanah. Fragt the Gemara, Yovel is bechad b'Tishrei? Does Yovel start on the first day of the year in Tishrei? B'Yud b'Tishrei. It starts on the 10th day, Yud Tishrei, Yom Kippur. The Chsiv, the pasuk by Yovel says, B'Yom HaKippurim taviru shofar. That in Yom Kippur you blow the shofar b'chol artzachem, and that's when the slaves go free. So it starts in Yud Tishrei. And for the Gemara, and this we also had before, Hamani Rabbi Shmuel ben Oshel Rabbi Yochanan ben Breiko hi. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa. It says in the pasuk, "V'kidashtem eshnas achamishim shana." You should sanctify the 50th year. Matamad Leima. Why is the Torah saying this? Lefisha Nema, because in another pasuk it says, "B'Yom HaKippurim." That only in Yom Kippur you blow the shofar. That's when it begins. So So I would think that the sanctity of Yovel only starts in Yom Kippur. That you have to sanctify the year, which means that you sanctify the year from the beginning of the year. So here Rabbi Shmuel said, Rosh Hashanah ad Yom Kippurim, from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, lo hayu avadim niftaron lebateyen. The avadim did not yet go home, but also v'lo mishtabdim ladeneim. They did not have to work for their master anymore. Elo oichlin v'shaisin usmeichim. They eat and they drink and they're happy. V'atreseim b'reisheim, and they wear their crowns on their heads. As Rashi says, if they want to put on a crown to show that they're going free. Then Kim V'Shigia Yom Kippurim, Taka Bezdin B'Shofar, comes Yom Kippur. That's when they blow shofar, and Nifturu Avadim Lebatayim, and that's when they actually go free. And V'Sadis Chayzdus Lebaleim, and the fields that were bought, that returned to the original owners, also go back at that time. So it starts in the Rosh Hashanah time, but it's only completed in Yom Kippur time. There's two pshatim of this. The Rebbe in one place in the Sikha brings it. There's two pshatim in the Mefarshim about this. Does this mean that it starts really Yom Kippur? It really starts Yom Kippur time. Rosh Hashanah is just like a hachana for this. It's because they're going to be going free in 10 days, so the Torah gives them a time to prepare for their freedom. Or no, really the freedom starts Rosh Hashanah time. Yom Kippur, once you blow shofar on Yom Kippur, that's Megal Mafreya, the Pe'emes they were free from the beginning. Right? For some reason, the Torah delayed the shofar until Yom Kippur. But once you blow shofar in Yom Kippur, it's Megala that they were really free from the beginning. So therefore, we can't work with them from the beginning because you don't know if they're free yet. Once you're going to blow shofar, it's going to come out that they were free, so you can't work with them already from Rosh Hashanah time. So that's the shitta of Rabbi Shmuel ben Oster Rabbi Yochanan ben Breike. That's why the Torah says, "V'kidashtem es shnas hachamishim shana," that it really starts already from Rosh Hashanah time. The Rabbanan, they hold no, it all starts from Yom Kippur. The Avodim only go free from Yom Kippur. Until Yom Kippur, they have to work. So according to the Rabbanan, Shana Matam Mekadesh, they learn out from this pasuk, V'kidashtem es shnas hachamishim, that Shana Matam Mekadesh, only when it comes to Shemitah, or that Yovel that is actually, only when it comes to Yovel does the Bezdin have to verbally go and announce that this is a holy year, Shemitah. But when it comes to the Chadashim, you don't have to announce, you don't have to be Mekadesh to Chadashim. That's what the Rabbanan learn out.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a whole year.
Again?
It doesn't have to be a whole year, in other words.
You don't have to announce it. I think that's the pshat of it. That's what Rashi, I believe, says, no? V'yata Mekadesh Shom Chaydish. Look, that's...
No, so how do you touch the pasuk?
Shnasa Chamishim Shana, only the 50th year, which is Yovel, that Bezdin announces, but the rest of the months of the year, Bezdin does not have to be Mekadesh in the same way.
So according to the first pshat,
it's a totally
year.
different pshat. Totally, yeah, okay.
1 year less 10 days.
Tanya Doch. Now we have another brayse here. And so there's actually a third pasuk. There's a third pasuk regarding Yovel. It says Yovel he. The Torah says this is Yovel. Why is the Torah saying Yovel he? The Torah says he should sanctify the 50th year. So now Yachel, I would think, just like in the beginning of the year, you sanctify the year, it starts from when? From Rosh Hashanah. And then it continues. The Kedusha is full when? By Yom Kippur. So kach miskadeshes vayelechas b'seifa. Maybe I would think that in the end of the year, the Kedusha continues into the Rosh Hashanah of the following year till the following Yom Kippur. The Yovel doesn't stop at Rosh Hashanah. It also, by the end of the year, it goes until the following Yom Kippur. And now you're going to say, but it's not the 50th year anymore. For al titma, don't wonder that I would think to say such a thing. I find this concept that by Shabbos and by Shemitah, the Gemara is going to bring later, that I find that you add from Chayil, from the weekday to Shabbos. So maybe there should be the same thing. That the Rosh Hashanah of the following year, Shemitah, the Yovel that is, continues until Yom Kippur. Talmud Laima, that's what the pasuk here says. There's another pasuk, a third pasuk. Yovel hi shnas chamishim. Shnas chamishim ata mekadesh v'yata mekadesh shnas chamishim v'achas. Oh, it's only the 50th year, which is Yovel. The 51st year, it's not Yovel anymore. The Yovel ends at Chav Tesel, and there's no Yovel further. Let's finish the Inyan here, just another few lines. V'Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan, you can't make this drasha. According to the Rabbanan, they hold that Bechlal, the Shemitah starts from Yom Kippur. The Shemitah doesn't start from Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara's have a minute to say that it should continue in the next year past Rosh Hashanah is because I should compare the end of the year to the beginning of the year. Just like in the beginning of the year it starts Rosh Hashanah, maybe the next year it also continues into Rosh Hashanah. But according to the Rabbanan, even in the beginning of the year it doesn't start Rosh Hashanah, it starts Yom Kippur. So you can't say the drasha this way. So what do they learn out from this extra pasuk where it says Yovel hi shnas chamishim shana? So the Gemara says a different drasha. Shnas chamishim atamayna. The 50th year, you count it as the 50th year for the cycle of those 50 years. V'atamayna shnas chamishim v'achas. And that 50th year is not counted as the first year of the next cycle of 50 years. In other words, maybe you would think that you have to count that 50th year both as the last year of the previous cycle and as the first year of the next cycle. And the Gemara right now brings an opinion that holds this way. To exclude of the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar, Rabbi Yehuda said, Shnas chamishim oile lekan lekan. The 50th year is counted as the 50th year of the previous cycle and as the first year of the next 50 years. So Kamash Malan Deloy. According to the Rabbanan, what we're learning out of here is Yovel hi Shnas chamishim, that it's that chamishim hi, that it's the 50th year of this cycle, and we don't count it as the first year of the next cycle. Okay. So actually, there's a machlekes about this. If we pass in like Rabbi Yehuda or not, the Rambam Paskins like the Rabbanan, that 50, we don't count that 50th year for both cycles. But Tosfos here says that even though the Gemara here is saying La Fukim with Rabbi Yehuda, he brings a bunch of different places in Shas where you see that the Gemara does go according to Rabbi Yehuda, and he paskins like Rabbi Yehuda. So this is a huge machlokes because it's Pashat Negeya to know regarding the Shemitah, when Shemitah is, when Yovel is. The major machlokes Rishonim here regarding Shemitah and Yovel, even regarding Bizman Hazeh, if it's 1 year or the next year, it keeps on getting off a year. So it's a big machlokes here.